Good afternoon and welcome to all the participants and to our Vice President, Mr. Šefčovič. Today, another session organized with the European School of Administration. The topic of the day will be the Commission's first annual strategic foresight report. And a couple of comments before we start with the presentation on the webinar format. For those who are not familiar, participants are not able to use the microphone or the camera. Only the panelists will be able to do so. So please use the chat icon at the bottom of your screen for any comments that you would like to share with us, and the Q&A icon at the bottom of the screen as well to raise any questions at the end of the presentation. Ana Iturriaga, the head of the school, will take care of your questions afterwards. As you see, this presentation is being recorded and you will get afterwards the link to the presentation. Thank you very much. The floor is yours, Ana.
Thank you so much, Blanca, and it's my great pleasure once again to welcome our Vice President, Mr. Šefčovič, to one of our lunchtime events. My name is Ana Iturriaga. As Blanca said, I'm the head of the European School of Administration. And for those of you who are not quite sure what we do, we're the ones in charge of your learning and development for all the institutions, something that we do with great pleasure, particularly in this last months, which have been big learning months. As you know, we had to do lots of things that we were not used to. As I said, it is something unprecedented the times that we're living, and things are happening that we never thought would happen. So they are challenging a lot our assumptions. And we realize with what is going on now with the whole pandemic and its aftermath, that the importance of anticipation and better preparation. I think those two vital issues have come to the fore. And how important it is for us to be able to anticipate in order to make better evidence-based policies, and to deal with the many challenges that are coming ahead to us, like in the technological, environmental, or the societal front, with issues like climate change, digitalization, demography, security, and of course, health, as we all know. Those are beckoning, but not just to us, but the whole world. As you know, we're all in the same boat here. And this is why the Commission decided, this new Commission with Mrs. von der Leyen, that it was very important to build up the anticipation and foresight capacity to be able to have more evidence-based policies for everyone. And they decided, of course, to have one specific dossier dedicated specifically to that, and that was allocated and assigned to our Vice President, Mr. Šefčovič, present today. And thank you very much, Mr. Šefčovič, to be here once again. And the idea was, in order to be able to have this particular portfolio, to identify long-term trends on issues on which we will need to act. So to put, as I said before, foresight at the heart of policymaking. And we will have the opportunity to talk about this, and its first fruit of this work, which is this report, this yearly report on foresight. We will have the chance to have Mr. Šefčovič himself to tell us a little bit about his work, about this report, and about what it means to have this specific capacity built on now in our institution. Just a couple of words before I give you the floor, Mr. Šefčovič, about your bio. So as we all know, you're currently the Vice President in charge of interinstitutional relations and foresight. But before that, you were a Slovak diplomat, and you had posts in Zimbabwe, Canada, and Israel. You also were permanent representative of to the EU here in Brussels, of Slovakia. And after that, you joined the institutions as Commissioner for Education, Training, Culture, and Youth, to go then to become the Commissioner and Vice President in charge of Interinstitutional Relations and Administration, then on to become the Commissioner and Vice President in charge of Energy Union and EU Space Policy, in order to get that more clean, sustainable, and secure energy. And you had also a spell as a MEP. You were elected to the European Parliament, and now you are back with us in your new position, and very interesting position that we will hear more about today. Just to say also that your background, in terms of your academic background, you were an economist from the University of Bratislava and Moscow, and also hold a PhD in law, and also diplomatic training from the University of Stanford in the US. You're also the author of the book Driving EU Forward, about with your feedback from your first experience, your first mandate. So having said all this, I think it's time to listen to what you have to tell us. Mr. Šefčovič, thank you once again, and you have the floor.
Thank you very much, Anna. First and foremost, I really would like to appreciate your kind invitation, because from my first or second portfolio times, I still remember very vividly how important European School of Public Administration was, is, and I'm sure will be, because we need high quality civil servants who are permanently trained, whose skills are upgraded, and who will be our major and the most important asset in coupling with all the new challenges which are really ahead of us. And we have, unfortunately, in 2020, a lot of the events which have been not so difficult foreseen, but nevertheless took us by great surprise. And I think, therefore, all the key elements you mentioned, anticipatory governance, evidence-based policy making, better network among, I would say, all of us being the member states, the European institutions, to be prepared for the future was absolute key. And I think that our president, Ursula von der Leyen, she had a really good foresight to just decide that foresight should be really anchored to the top political level, and that we should benefit and profit from all the high quality resources we have in the European Commission, we have in our institutions, but also across our member states and European academia, to be really better prepared for the future. What was, I would say, such a key challenge from the beginning, and where slowly I think we are progressing in the right direction, was how to make the foresight relevant, that we would not only produce the good report, or that we would not only contribute to the, let's say, good discussions with some kind of key strategic talking points, but that it would be political relevant, that it would be of practical use for the decision makers, for the policy makers, and how to make it in a way that also all this foresight community, which is very rich and very good in the European Union, would see that their work is actually reflected in what the European institutions are doing, and that the policy makers actually listening to their advice. So that was, I would say, such a, I would say, first task, how to embed the strategic foresight into the policy decision making on the top European level. And I'm sure that the colleagues who are listening to us, they know that I am not the first one who tried it, and Madame von der Leyen is not the first president of the Commission who already thought about these issues, because if you go back to Jacques Delors' time, already at that time, he created so-called cellule de prospective, because already at that time, they felt that it's important to have ability to look over the horizon a little bit around the corner, to make sure that what we would adopt today would withstand the test of time, and that pressure of the change, which is becoming more robust and more dynamic every day. So what is definitely to the credit of our president and this commission is that we are indeed first major public administration which embedded the strategic foresight on the political level, and I think we should be proud of it, and we should really use this possibility to the fullest. And therefore, we also wanted to make sure that when we present this first strategic foresight report, that it would already reflect how we want to use it for the future. And the idea which I suggested to the president, and of course I'm very glad that she really put it in that chronological order, would be to have a strategic foresight report as an annual event, which would inform the State of the Union address, which we all know is a speech which contains the key elements of the program for the following year, and then that it would be, of course, amalgamated into the Commission work program, for which I'm also responsible. So, and this is how we are doing this year. And of course, we just would like to make sure that this cycle would be progressing like that also in subsequent years, with of course making it more and more suitable to the political realities, and to make it practical for both policymakers, but also managers and the analysts who are working for different DGs in the European Commission or other European institutions. If you look at what the Foresight actually is, there is quite a few descriptions and definition. I think that one of the best is which describe the strategic foresight as the art of developing intelligence about the future to inform the actions of today. And of course, this can be achieved only if this is collective exercise, because you can make the best possible analysis, and our DGs are really producing a lot of high quality discussion papers, analytical papers, but the key task would be how to filter them out to the top political level in a way that they would be noticed, noted, and that there would be action taken upon this report. And we also have to bear in mind that we have to use the strategic foresight not for what I would say that traditional political tools are used, because very often they are aimed at short-term actions and quick fixes, because very often, and it's very natural in the political world, that the politicians are very much interested about the next couple of years, next elections, about quick solutions to the problems which very often need maybe longer-term solutions or longer-term vision how to deal with that. So therefore, we have to build the foresight capacities, but also the style of work and management, which would be in a position to challenge the status quo, but which also would focus minds of the decisions maker for the next generation rather than the next election. When I got this portfolio, I was getting a lot of funny questions from the journalists. They asked me, do you know the numbers for the lotto draw next week, or do you know when there will be rain, when there will be snow? And I told them, of course I don't, because foresight is not something like having the crystal ball and be able to predict what will happen here and then. We know that the future is impossible to predict, but what we can foresee in foresight, this would be new trends, new shocks, new developments of the events, which might have a long-lasting impact on our lives, on our livelihoods, and on the future of the European Union. And if we would be, let's say, honest enough and look at major crises of the past few years, if we are looking at the financial and monetary crisis even facing a couple of years ago, migration crisis, or even the COVID-19 crisis, we can see that the writing was somewhere on the wall. But I still remember all the nerve-wracking moments when I was sitting next to Olli Rehn, and we've been dealing with the crisis of Europe. But I also remember very well that we had already full-blown crisis in the United States, and we still somehow believed that it would never come to Europe, even though it was against all the analysts' predictions and prognoses. We just simply didn't want to hear the harsh truths. If you would just listen also to the analysts during the migration crisis and just look what these desperate people who've been seeking refuge from the atrocities of war, what they've been Googling on their mobile phones, we would see that predominantly they've been two words: Greece and Europe. It was not so difficult then to make the conclusions that this is where they want to go. And we would see the number of the clicks, and we see that we are talking actually about the hundreds of thousands or millions of the people who are contemplating and considering the idea. The same with pandemics. We had famous YouTube about Bill Gates, but a lot of also reports from ECDC or other health professionals, then pandemics would be, I would say, nightmare of this century because of the globalization, because of the flight interconnections, because of the way how we used to travel and how our lifestyles have changed. I mean, just this morning, I heard from Laurent, if you just look about the number of flights between Asia and Europe, which doubled or tripled over the 2-3 years, we might see why the spread of the COVID-19 was much faster than comparing it with SARS, which we also remember very well. So our task, which will not be easy, would be to be able not only to grasp what comes, I would say, in that wealth of analytical thinking, but to be able to select those most relevant issues in the form of horizon scanning or mega trends assessment, and bring it to the political level, to the attention, and hopefully to the preventive action. So how to achieve that, how to develop this useful intelligence about the future? First, what would be very important is to keep our eyes on the horizon, to know what is brewing. And to this, we are still looking for the best possible answers, how to combine the GRC analytical capacities with other DGs, with very strong interest in the analyzing the future coming from the European Parliament, which really developed very solid team full of high quality analysts, but also the power of critical thinking in our member states, in academia, how to bring it together and sift through it in a way that we would spot those pieces of information which are relevant for our policy decision making, and then this would be, in my way, the ideal horizon scanning. Then, of course, we have to be able honestly assess the possible future risks and opportunities, to build different so-called alternative scenarios and consider what would be the best way forward. And of course, integrate this knowledge into action. If you look what we are doing, for example, with our decision to be climate neutral by 2050, that's clearly that. There have been different scenarios. You would remember just a couple of years ago, we've been discussing 8 of them, and we went for the most ambitious one. So that's the scenario build up. That's the choice we have made. And then we are doing this backcasting. If you want to be climate neutral in 2050, what we have to do today? And you have all the host of things we have to do. Change milestone for 2030, push for technological breakthroughs in green and digital technologies, change the skill sets of our population, invest in 21st century infrastructure, and of course be very clear that we would be enforcer of the Paris Agreement, not only within the Europe, but we would expect that everyone on the globe would respect it. And if not, that we would be making sure that European market would be protected against some kind of attempts to abuse our commitment to the high ecological and environmental standard. So the structure, coming back to our topic, the foresight is about anticipating, exploring, and acting. And I would say that quality of action would distinguish the foresight from the strategic foresight. If we can do the follow-up with a concrete action, then we can say that we put into place strategic foresight operation, which is helping our decision making process. I think what would be very important for our common work is to make sure that we would use that host of and wealth of information and analysis we have in the European Commission, and therefore we would not be focusing only on this very important but one report a year. What we want to do, and we already started this year on such a small pilot project, meaning that when you see in the Commission work program that there is the flagship initiative, so we are always trying to bring the Foresight information, Foresight contribution to this, very often by our special newsletter or directly into the text. So you would see that this is what we are doing right now, because Foresight tell us this is important for our future and explain how this is working. And that's of course our intention, that we would do this, because I think it's also a good training for our DGs to be a little bit better versed in how to use this fit for future approach also when we are preparing our flagship initiatives. And another very important part of our work, for which I am also politically responsible, is better regulation. I'm sure that you noted that we went from so-called REFIT name to the Fit for Future, because REFIT, it means for me something like we are fixing something which is old, which is not up to date. And I think we just have really to move into also our mental approach to this, that we have to propose the measures which are fit for future. And therefore, we are also now changing the way how this platform for the Fit for Future would work. We want to kind of cut the line which was there between official member states representatives and then representatives of different associations. We want to put them into the one group and really bring, I would say, the key topics where they can really help us from the field experience. And one topic which I have very much on my mind is that we talk a lot about the future. We just adopted the most ambitious budget since the EU was founded. And the goal of that is to be more resilient, to have really the infrastructure, social, economic, health, digital, green, which would make sure that we can not only be climate neutral by 2050, but we would still be one of the top 3 global economies as we are today. And for that, we need this 21st century infrastructure. But if you look, how long does it take to us to get all the permits, all the studies, and when we do all the public procurement? If I exaggerate a little bit, if we won't change the way how we do these big projects, it might happen that we will have a first permit for a fast train or smart grids or another new technology putting into the practice really in 2030. And we already need it yesterday. So therefore, I want to ask this Fit for Future platform and also the member states and our colleague in all EU institutions, let's focus on those bottlenecks which are slowing us down from being faster in modernizing infrastructure, being faster in deploying these very important projects for our future. I think that from what we have been doing the last year and this year, we've been inadvertently putting the Foresight already in practice. I mean, if I look at the European Battery Alliance, which we founded 2 years ago, 2.5 years ago, because I felt from this work on the Energy Union that we would never be able to be strong in smart mobility if we wouldn't master such an important piece of this technology, which is energy storage, which are the batteries, which have a software, hardware, very, very complicated chemistry. And if we would be dependent on China for this, we can all forget about really having top-class European car manufacturing. And I think that the call came in the right moment, because currently we are investing in Europe. Last year it was 3 times more than in China. We invested 60 billion, China 17. This year, so far, 2 times more than 25 billion euros into the battery sector. So we became the hot zone for investment into the batteries. So the major, biggest investment into the smart mobility batteries are now made in Europe, because the industry believes us, world believes us, that we are going to be the manufacturers of the greenest, most sustainable batteries, and we are deadly serious about how we are going to transform the smart mobility sector. The same we are now doing with hydrogen. The same we are now doing with the critical raw materials, which with which we need to really be very careful, because just using another example linked with battery, but not only, by 2050 we would need 60 times more lithium than now, and 18 times more lithium already in 2030. And I can go one by one on this critical raw material list, where we have 30 of them, and you would see that sometimes we're in a situation that we've been fighting so much dependency on fossil fuels from Russia, and it's kind of being replaced by the dependency on critical raw materials coming or from China or from countries or companies where China has very strong influence and strong role. So we again have to adopt the same approach as with the European Battery Alliance, to be strong with raw materials, to be strong with hydrogen, and I'm sure that we do something similar for the digital technology. Coming back to the strategic foresight report, the first part was about this, I would say, pedagogical introduction. Why do we need that? What the foresight means. And then we went to assess what I think is really critical importance for Europe, and this is resilience. Because you would, I'm sure, noted that when we've been speaking about our priorities for the future, we very much focused on green and digital. Since March, we are talking also resilient. And I think rightly so, because this first half a year clearly discovered some of our vulnerabilities in supplying of critical materials, medical, the key spare parts for our factories, ingredients we need for the medicament production, and so on and so forth. So I think that resilience was becoming and is a very important part of our policymaking, and therefore we focused on how can we assess the resilience, and you would see it in our first report that we've been looking at it from 4 angles. We've been looking at it from the socioeconomic angle, from the green digital angle, but also from the geopolitical angle, and we wanted to also give it to the visual reflection where we are in our member states, and we went for so-called prototype dashboards. There was enormous discussion around it among the services. Are these figures reliable? Wouldn't it be confronted by the member states who might be critical about the dashboards that the figures are not correct? But here I can tell you that the political wisdom in this case was really on our side, because the discussion in the college was extremely supportive of these prototype dashboards. The discussion among the ministers in General Affairs Council, the same. When I'm talking with experts, with analysts outside of our institution, all of them are telling us that this is the right thing to do, because you kind of visualize what resilience means. And they are kind of proving that it's not the GDP, which is the most decisive in tackling the COVID crisis. Look what's happening in the United States. Very high GDP, but low quality healthcare. No social stabilizers protecting people from unemployment. Low vaccination rate, and so on and so forth, which really are making Europe much better suited for tackling the COVID-19. And I hope that in these difficult weeks ahead of us, that all that resilience which we built over the years in the systems will prove us right, and will focus us more on strengthening the resilience. That collection of the data which we collected in the dashboard also brought up another topic, and we want to work with all of you on that in the future. And I would call the discussion going beyond the GDP, don't we need well-being index? Discussion was here before. I think it's coming back, because GDP is in one way or another rewarding the consumption which might be dangerous to us humans, to the planet. And I think that we just have to really collect the data which would reflect better what is more suited to the well-being of the people on this planet. It's not something that you would replace the GDP indicator tomorrow. The GDP for sure will stay here, but I think to have started the work which over the years would help us to really better manage and measure the well-being of our citizens, our people, would be, I think, a very important one. Last 2 points which I would like to make. The first one is about what would be such a horizontal topics you would like to deal with in the next years. Besides that, what I hope would be regular contribution to the flagship projects presented to the college. This would be horizontal work on open strategic autonomy. You have seen that it was also on the agenda of the head of states and government in the European Council. I can tell you that Europe ministers has been discussing it with me for quite some time. So it's really a topic which interests a lot of people. I cannot say that we have just super consensus around it because there are different takes on it, how to combine our commitment to the free and fair trade with also better acknowledgement that we have to have ability to have diverse supply from diverse stakeholders if it comes to the key strategic sectors of European economy. Second topic, which was actually proposed by Nicola Schmidt, our Commissioner for Social Affairs and Jobs, where he would like us to focus on what actually means the green job. What is the skill set? What are the predictions? How many of them we will have, and how many of the current jobs will disappear? If it will be enough jobs that the new economy can really create for the future in Europe. And the last such a horizontal topic would be the interlink between green and digital. Practical example, what I mean by that is that if we would be using cloud storing of data as we're using today, by 2040, almost 40% of the global energy will go just for powering our data centers. And if you compare how much energy do you need to store 1 gigabyte of information on cloud or to store it locally, so the difference is 1,400 times. So I think that's the main reason why we need to develop new concepts like edge computing, fog computing, where we will have a data centers much closer to us, and it would also help us to have better control over data of our European citizens. If by any chance we have with us also the colleagues from other European institutions, I just would like to invite them already now for what I hope will be a very important conference in November, which we are going to do together with other institutions. We are working with all European institutions under so-called ESPAS umbrella, where we are really inviting high quality speakers and representatives from all the institutions and from the whole world. We'll see how much COVID will push it to the virtual level, but last year it was a big success, and we want to continue in that tradition, because our goal clearly is to get the Foresight quality on the world-class level, and clearly to have that capacity which would help us not only to showcase what we have in Europe, but how can we use it for our practical policy making. So all of you are invited, and I hope that together with all EU institutions, we can really organize the event, which would be very important for all of us and set the new theme for the next strategic foresight report. So thank you very much for your kind invitation. And if there will be any questions, I'll be very happy to answer. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Mr. Šefčovič. Indeed, it was a very comprehensive briefing of what you're doing, and tremendously exciting. And indeed, it has trickled a lot of questions from our colleagues. So let me just go into it. The first question, actually quite outright, is like you said, strategic foresight is also action. This requires that politicians are ready to listen to it. So the needed action that you suggest is actually implemented. Could you tell us more on how do you intend to make these politicians listen to whatever has been advised by the scientists and this collective intelligence exercise you just mentioned.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. I think that to get this done, we need to have the courage to tell sometimes something which is already, I would say, coined as inconvenient truth. And of course, to do that, you have to be part of the political body, which is my big advantage, that I know that I can always inform the president, I can inform the college. But to do that, of course, I need high quality information, and I have to be pretty sure that what I'm going to tell to my colleagues, which would require subsequent action, that it's I would say high quality information. And currently, what we are struggling with is how to filter out that pieces of information which are important but might not be, let's say, that relevant for just now, and how to pick up from, let's say, different signs which are flying towards our direction, the relevant ones which would require the action right now. And if you look at this new commission, I think so far we are behaving very strategically. If you look at the budget, I mean, to adopt such a strategic decision about 1.8 trillion euros, actually, at the times where, if I remember correctly, our February discussion, our best hope was that how can we plug the hole after the UK leaves the EU. But the leaders, based on the assessment how complicated this aftershock after the COVID crisis would be, what would it need to restart the economy and to cope with this crisis, they realized that we need the breakthrough. We need invest money now, and it has to be massive, and it must be done in a way that we do not want to restore all economy, but to build a new ones. And that was, I think, very strategic move. If you look at how this money is going to be spent, that you have 37% going to green, 20% going to digital, again, that you want to use that money to spur the innovation, new technologies, and support it. The action which we are going to take under Horizon Europe, where again, the priority is very clearly given to that research which is underpinning this strategic decisions. And then, of course, all that review which is being done in a trade policy within the state aid, and push for reforms in our member states. All this, we can say that it's very much based on the foresight this institution have, and which is now supported by the member states. So a lot of angles for which we've been used, even I would say a lot of taboos are being removed. The way how we look at carbon adjustment tax, financial transaction tax, the way how we would approach a new assertive trade policy, the realization that we have to rely much more on ourselves, because we don't know what would be the next developments across Atlantic, and we see that the situation in our neighborhood is not going easy. So all that I think is very much now reflected in our concrete policies. So I think that we can really say that we are adopting the measures which would have impact on the EU well over the period of this European Commission or of this European Parliament. So I think this is how in practice it's reflecting right now. And there is also a lot of practical steps, like I mentioned, hydrogen, batteries, microchips, critical raw materials. And I'm sure based on the industrial strategy, where we have these 14 key areas upon which we want to focus, that we will see more and more of these concrete actions coming in your way.
But I think that the question from my colleague was a bit more pointing at the fact that now we have got indeed a wonderful plan of what we're going to be doing with our money for the next 7 years. But unfortunately, many of the electoral cycles are shorter, you know, and how can we make sure that our politicians are going to really follow that 7-year, scanning of what we should be doing and not be influenced more by the electoral cycle?
Yeah, I think that should be actually the big advantage of the European institutions, that our budget is for 7 years, and we all know the M+3 years, so we can say that we have more or less like the money available for 10 years spending. And if you look at it from the perspective where we want to be in 2030, so it's actually the time where we should be able to reach the first key milestone to the climate neutrality for 2050. So from the, let's say, national perspective, this is already pretty long term. And I have to say that also heads of states and government, when they're meeting in the formation of the European Council, what is, I would say, remarkable, especially during this year, they've been able to put on themselves this long-term thinking hat, that they have to do the firefighting back home, and to be in such a position as prime minister today, it's enormously complicated, difficult, and I can imagine of the zillions of decisions they have to take every week. But once they come here, and I would say also thanks to the good work of the Commission, that we've been able to offer them that scenario of climate neutral, assertive Europe, which would be among the top 3 global economies, not only now, but also in the future. And we told them what we need for that. We need political support, we need budget. And I think that this should be kind of anchor, which the forefathers of the European integration thought at that time, that we should not be that prone to the election cycles, that we should have the possibility to think a little bit more long term, to be a little bit detached from the national politics, and think the long term. So this is, I would say, the best way how to combine, I would say, that relative stability and long term vision of the European level with what is more and more complicated and a volatile domestic situation, where we have. If you look at, I think we have probably in the majority of member states very fragile coalitions. The minority governments are very frequent, and I think it goes with that new dynamics, that uncertainty which was brought by the 21st century, that all the established economic models or behavioral models are kind of questioned, and it brings this uncertainty, which I think we know, all of us, very well from home, and to cope with that on the political level is not easy. So therefore, I think that the EU level has that responsibility to try to kind of offer that long-term thinking cushion, and that ability not to completely be lost in the volatility of today, because that would mean that we will not be well prepared for tomorrow.
Thank you. Another question: how do you see the practical link between foresight and legislative innovation-sensitive measures in better regulation?
I think that first and foremost, we are working very closely also with Véronique Gaffet and Regulatory Scrutiny Board, and we offered also her this foresight contributions. And they are using it, and I think that our impact assessment board is doing a remarkable job under very difficult circumstances, and especially very often under huge time constraints, because I mean, in the time of crisis, you have to act swiftly. And and this is what I'm telling to my fellow commissioners, that the good impact assessment is the best investment to the success of your initiative, because they will test all the questions, they will look at from every angle. And right now, one of the angles and one of the aspects which would be tested every negotiations with the council and the parliament would be, is it future-proof? How can you guarantee, especially if you're talking about the digital world, that once the legislative process is concluded, so it takes 1 to 2 years, as we know, that it's not outdated already by then. So that future-proofing should be already in that initial proposals, with a way of anticipation, with a way of foresight, but also in a way of regular revision clauses, which would allow us to modernize that piece of legislation when it would be necessary. And therefore, we want that our Foresight people would work closely when it comes to the impact assessment. Then, of course, in all the inter-service discussions up to the cabinet level, and that each legislative proposal should have that Foresight element in it, because I think it's also highlighting how important it would be for the future.
To what extent was Foresight used in the definition of the Commission's headline ambitions?
I think that at that time, it was just decision of the President, Ursula von der Leyen, about the allocation of the portfolio. The Foresight was for me another greenfield project. This was exactly like with the Energy Union, which didn't exist, but we had to create it, we had to found it, and we had to build it within the 4 years, which we did. And for me, it's a great personal satisfaction that thanks to all that legislation, it's actually 43 pieces of legislation which we adopted the last year, that we have very solid ground, which now can be just upgraded to the high level of the ambition. But what we did with the clean energy for all proposal, or with smart mobility, or the smart grids, or diversification of energy supplies, all that is helping us to be more ambitious for the future. So when the portfolio was allocated, so this was again the greenfield. So I also personally had to learn a lot about Foresight, map out what are the, I would say, strengths of our EU institutions. I was not surprised that we have such a huge potential at JRC and practically at all DGs. And I would say our first contribution was when we've been adopting the Green Deal, because President told me, but Maroš, we need some good figures. Good figures meaning not only how much would it cost, but what would be the cost of non-action? What would be the cost if we wouldn't be like serious about the climate change? And that was a new angle, and I very much appreciated how the president looked at it, because I mean, if you hear about the hundreds of billions of property loss by 2030 and 2050, just only if it comes to the floods in Central and Eastern Europe. But the same if you are talking about fires, if you are talking about the hundreds of square kilometers on the coastal areas, which would be uninhabitable if we simply wouldn't make it well, or the loss to agriculture if simply the weather would become too hot for the traditional agriculture. So the costs are enormous, and I think it was very important to bring this angle to the discussion on the Green Deal. And I think it's still very important to have these figures, to upgrade them, to make them updated on permanent basis, because this would be, I would say, permanent argument which we need to be well prepared for, not only for our discussion within the European Union, but especially with our partners. We see what kind of debate on this is raging in the United States, but also in Asia, in Russia, in Africa. So I think that the arguments that you can be green and at the same time this could be a good and right economic choice is still the argument we have to make. So I have to say that if it comes to the 6 headline priorities, it was very much based on how President saw the future, how she made the conclusions from the debate with the key political leaders within the European Parliament, all that experience she brought from the consultations with the member states, and then of course from the seminar with a new college. And I think that she picked the right ones. Nobody questioned the right choice of these 6 priorities, and we just see that COVID-19 served, as analysts describe it, as kind of accelerator and amplifier of the tendencies and trends which been here, and therefore we are just now putting them in a high gear and maybe add the additional ambitions to be able to cope with these dramatic changes which we see all around us.
A more pragmatic question here: how do you select the contributing organizations like academia, think tanks that you're working with for your Foresight plans?
I think there are several steps we've made. First, we wanted to make sure that that our house is in order, if I can put it in this way. So we together with the SecGen, we created this Commission Foresight correspondent network. So each DG has a representative there, each cabinet has a representative there, and SecGen is having these regular meetings with them, and always all the time, if possible. I'm also very happy to take part in this discussion. Then we went interinstitutionally, where also Ann Mettler, she did a brilliant job in bringing all the institutions together. So you have European Parliament, Council, both committees, Court of Auditors, EIB, European Central Bank is a recent addition to that list of the institutions participating together, and it works very well. It works a little bit like a pledging conference. So concerning the budget, the staff, the premises, the ideas, we are kind of collecting the input from all of these institutions and plan for the future. And this is how we are going to do also this ESPAS conference in the November. And then we used the first edition of this Foresight report and send it to all the governments and ask the question, so who is in your government the minister for the future? Who should be responsible for Foresight, with whom we can establish this informal network? We are getting responses from our member states. Some are more enthusiastic than others. In one case, it's the minister. In other case, these are the analysts who are working for the prime minister. But I mean, this community is being created as we speak. And I had a long discussion on this with Europe ministers, with COREPER ambassadors, and it's something what the member states like. They also appreciated these dashboards, which we discussed so much in the Commission, because they see it also as a visual tool how we would monitor and measure if the money which you want to spend under the resilience and recovery program will be well used. And now we are, of course, going further. So we are prospecting, and there is an open invitation to the leading institutes and institutions. The OECD is working with us on a lot of things, the World Economic Forum as well. And we have also some of the leading institutes who are very much interested in our work. So I don't think that we have now kind of admission letter or a special process developed. We are very happy that academic circles are interested in this work, that think tanks are very much intrigued by it. And we are now thinking that how can we structure our work, because it requires the regularity, the adequate frequency, so we can get the input from them. So from now, I would say it's kind of a coalition of the willing, and we are ready to work with all institutes who want to share with us something important for the Foresight, and we are still looking for the best way how we would structure that cooperation as we did it within the institutions and with the member states. The same we want to do with academia and think tanks.
And actually, a question attached to that, you almost touched on that with the pledging thing you were just mentioning. Are there any financial instruments attached to these new networks?
Yeah, I think that again here I would say that we are working with the finances as they are allocated. So if it comes to the organization, for example, of this conference for this November, so we will be sharing the responsibilities. I think this time it would be the European Parliament who would be the host, as we've been the last time, and we always discuss how to share the costs from or SecGen or the relevant DGs, and more or less we work, let's say, on financing project by project, and so this is how it works. I think that what we need here is not that much of a, I would say, financial support, how or more, I would say we need the ability how to filter that good quality information to the top level, and how to motivate our DGs, our researchers to be focused on these questions in their daily work. Because I think that, as I said, we have high quality in all our institutions, and sometimes I'm very sorry to see that we have high quality studies which are this thick, but very often very few people read them. So you have, and it's from one side, it's I'm sure that pleasure of every author. I also, when I wrote the book or a good article about which I was proud, I know that it's a very good feeling for every researcher, for every author. But at the same time, I think that we should also produce the materials which could have direct impact on what we do here. Policy making, legislating, strategizing for the future. And therefore, that's my plea with our colleagues to be also as practical as possible in what they do, because I know that deep research is very important, but in today's dynamic world, it also has to have a practical implications for our work, even if it's for the future, but for the things we can do today.
And will foresight efforts in the European Commission turn towards the functioning of the EU itself beyond the better regulation efforts?
I think so, because we already see that there is a high interest in the foresight. I'm kind of now on such a virtual roadshow, because almost every institution wants to learn more. I just had the chance to take part in the away day of the Court of Auditors. I'm invited to 2 or 3 committees in the European Parliament with the foresight and the report. The same goes for the councils. I had several meetings with the ministers, and we have a lot of interest from the research and think tanks. And I think it's also positively perceived by the head of states and government. So I think we have this positive, good predisposition from the environment in which we are working, and now we have to prove that we are worth it, that the expectations which are there, that we can deliver, that we can be very good in the horizon scanning, that we will be able to assess appropriately the resilience, that we would be much more precise when we are talking about the mega trends and how they affect the life in Europe. And as you probably noted in our report, we are talking about 14 of them. It's again methodology of the JRC, which was very well appreciated. And I think they are really kind of capturing the mega trends which have the biggest impact on the well-being and quality of life in Europe. And I think from them we can really do this backcasting for the actions of today. So I believe that yes, that this would be something which will stay. As I said, we are the first major public administration which brought the foresight on political level. But we see the countries like Singapore, Israel, and others who've been using it before, probably not with such a political profile, but been really harnessing the result of good foresight for the domestic policies.
And a bit of a controversial question here is, is it the moment now for the EU to set up, even if bit by bit, some kind of EU intelligence service? Would that allow the EU to be a more assertive actor and a more credible partner vis-a-vis the USA, China, and Russia, for example, with the more and more complex and challenging world that we're living?
I think that what is important to say is that when I was preparing also for my hearing, and when I started to study more deeply about foresight, so I mean it was quite clear that the best presentations I have seen was where the intelligence services are working closely with the foresight communities, that it's kind of cross-fertilization. And I think it's very natural, because you have usually very strong analytical minds working for intelligence community. This is where the traditionally been. The intelligence is very much based on analysts, on foresight, on different scenarios, and when you have this good, I would say, interface, this cross-fertilization of the assessment, that usually shows at what kind of foresight you can make. And so that's something which, of course, to be quite honest, is also on our mind, but it's extremely, I would say, sensitive things to do from the point of view because of intelligence community. I remember when we've been talking about 3 pillars of the EU. So I remember one minister saying at that time that intelligence is the 5th pillar, not even 4th, but 5th, because there, of course, the prerogatives, the sensitivity, the I would say the classification of that information is so sensitive that it really requires special approach. But you're absolutely right that we see that how our INSCEN is also improving the analytical work, and we had the preliminary discussion with them, because I think that in the future it could be only to the benefit if both the intelligence community and foresight community would be able to find, I would say, the common theme, common topics upon which we can really deliver the better product. When I was responsible for energy union files, I was in many negotiations, and quite a few of them been together with my American partners. And I have to say that, of course, it's extremely useful and impressive when you see that your partners have more or less live intelligence information with him. Why this company is pushing for that, why this politician is interested in something else, what is the classified information about that pipeline or other pipeline, and they know how to put it together. And this is something what we in Europe are still working on. And I think that it's not only on EU level, very often on national level, not always, I would say, we can classify the information in a way which really has to be like a top secret for your eyes only, and for the Prime Minister and the President or Minister of Interior, or the intelligence, which is of course confidential, but can actually help you to understand a little bit better what is the topic of the negotiation, why this or that party is playing it in that way. But that's something what I think we definitely would need to kind of improve in the future, and that's on my mind. But we will see how far we can take this, because I know it's very sensitive topics for many, but definitely it would improve the quality analytics in Europe if we can talk to each other more often, or better to say on a regular basis.
Totally. That was where I was going now. Is linked to this question. There's a question regarding the reliability of data that is used is absolutely fundamental for your strategic foresight capacity. So data reliability has traditionally been a problematic in recent years, and we have just seen it with the COVID crisis and you know, where it originated and all the numbers that are being that we're seeing around. So how would you deal with this particular issue of the reliability of data?
When we've been working on this dashboards, of course, when you're talking to the hardcore scientists, of course, every figure they put on the table, and I fully respect that and understand that, they want to have certified, verified, rechecked, and then check the whole table again, which I think, of course, it's very, very important, but not always, I would say, in the let's say normal political circumstances, you can always use that. So what we did was to use the data which been available to us. So we have taken the data from Eurostat, we have taken the data from known sources, we have the data collected by the JRC, and we've been processing this data. So we've been working with data as reliable as possible for our dashboards. But if it comes to the COVID-19 statistics, I think that was a big topic among the European ministers. It was a discussion just a week ago, the last Tuesday, and you are right that there we would need more coordination, and I'm glad that not only my colleagues in the Commission, Commissioner Kyriakides, Margaritis Kinas, but also German presidency was pushing for asking probably ECDC to develop the common methodology, how we would evaluate the test, how we would evaluate the number of people who are in hospitals, then of course the assessment of the mortality rate, how it would be helpful if we could have, let's say, one map for all EU countries, which zones are red, which are orange, which are green, and to have much more of a commonality if it comes to the measures taken. Because today, I mean, I'm sure that the colleagues who are watching us, they are faced with the same dilemma as I have, that just to cross from one country into another, very often you have completely different rules. And if we are lost and we are, let's say, experienced travelers, so how the common businessman or the common people who just want to visit their kids, or students who wants to come back to see their parents, how they can travel. So this is clearly something what I think also our president had on her mind when she was talking about the need for health union, to be a little bit clearer on how these things are organized. We do not want new competencies or new powers, but what we are pleading for as a commission, for more coordination, for more common methodology, and for more transparency of how the decisions are taken, and how we are able to explain it to our citizens. So in this point, I totally agree with the question that the reliability of the data is absolutely crucial for taking good policy choices for the future. So that would be definitely the challenge, not only in foresight, but also in other areas which are so important as tackling the COVID crisis today.
I'm aware that we're getting close to the end of our interview and of our session, and we have got, I apologize for colleagues, I have more than 15 questions waiting, but I would just try to give you a couple more before you have to leave us. So one here is, do you plan to establish a stronger link between strategic foresight and the European semester and the recovery and resilience facility in the future? Also to increase the strategic coherence of the EU institutions' work on reforms and investments in the member states?
I mean, here the response would be yes, even though I understand that the European semester is a well-established process, but I was talking also to Vice President Dombrovskis, and I presented it in this way in a college that this could be extremely useful tool. We are presenting every year annual growth survey, how the economy will look the next year, what is the state of the economy today. We are going to invest enormous amount of money in this RRF, this recovery and resilience facility. So I believe that all of us would benefit from having good monitoring tools. So that's an offer. That's the possibility. We are working on it, and we just want to use it as a contribution to the even a higher quality European semester. And of course, we would like also to use it on a regular basis. We have to agree what is regular. It's once a year, it's 1, 2, 3 years, when we could assess how this RRF investments are actually taking ground and how is it reflected in overall resilience of our member states.
And for resilience, precisely, we need to foresee not only mega trends, but also potential sudden game changer events like COVID-19, for example, which can put EU safety at risk. This means more research, but Horizon Europe has been cut. So 2 questions. Are we investing enough in safety and resilient research? And second, are we putting safety first in the greener and digital transition investments?
Yeah, if it comes to Horizon Europe, of course, we've been all quite saddened with the cut into some of the programs like Horizon Europe, but also I think what is very regrettable, this solvency instrument, because it was exactly aimed at helping those, especially the SMEs, who might really have a big problems in this particular difficult economic time, not to be faced with the hostile takeovers from foreigners. So, as you know, the negotiations are going on. The European Parliament is very much on our side on these matters. But despite the result, I can say that if you look at the volume of investment which will be done into the research and innovation, so we're together with the RRF, I think we will have around 100 billion euros going to the research and innovation. This is gigantic sum, and it will very much also depend how we can also combine it with the EIB funds, with the private investment, and then of course what kind of results we would get. And of course, safety is always important, and I think that if it comes to regulatory quality in the EU, I think nobody even doubts that if it comes to the safety and protection of consumers, that we have high standards in the world, and definitely we are not going to change it. And now already I also getting the signals from my team that we have another meeting to start in 2 minutes. So maybe last question, if you allow, so because the people are already waiting in the corridor.
Well, actually, I have to choose one. That is difficult, but I mean, I think that seeing that we're going to have, and looking at the news today, you know, that is going on with the US, do you have you in the foresight thought what could happen in case there is a certain person elected and the person and the other one doesn't want to accept the results of those elections, and how could that impact us?
I think that we already feel the impact of the fact that United States of America are kind of pulling out from the heart of international multilateral system. I think we already felt it. We have seen how much it impacted the work of WTO, WHO. We never in the past have so much, let's say, tension between the EU and US if it comes to the trade. But I think the testimony to how strong transatlantic ties are is that despite of all that, I would say headwinds which we felt, still we have the biggest trade volume on this planet. We are still biggest investors in the USA, and US is biggest investor in Europe. That we are #1 of each other trading partners, and I still think that if it comes to values, to democracy, despite that, of course, dramatic shifts and ups and downs in the US politics, that we are allies. And of of course, what we have to hope for would be that the next administration would realize, I would say, the simple truth, which I had the chance to tell personally to the President Trump, that the United States would never have better allies than the Europeans. And it comes into all aspects, from the rule of law, through environment, down to the regulatory practices in our technologies, assessment of democracy, or the outlook for the future. And I believe there is a lot of people in DC and many more in the American cities, in the American states, in the American companies who share that view. And I hope that after the election cycle, which is always extremely difficult in the United States, that would be the theme, the approach which would prevail. But despite of all that, I would not detract a millimeter from what I said, that Europe has to be more self-reliant, more self-confident. And I would maybe end it with a quote from Greek MEP, Madame Aximakopoulos, who very nicely decrypted the word autonomia for us. That auto means selves, and almost actually mean the law. That autonomia is your right to adopt the decisions you prefer, that you have the right to decide what you think is the best for your future. And I think this is what we need to develop even more in European Union. So here I'm looking at the watch. I really have to thank you very much for this very dynamic session. If there are that many questions, maybe you can invite me next time, and we can check how many of my foresight elements been correct or not. But I will be always very pleased to have this chat with my colleagues here.
So it's a date. Absolutely, we're going to ask you to come back. Now that you have so nicely said it, thank you so much. You have to run to your next meeting. It was a pleasure. Hoping to see you soon. Thank you very much, and all the best,
and stay safe and healthy, all of you. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thanks very much. Bye.
Bye-bye.
Thank you very much to the Vice President. Thank you also to the colleagues who stay with us until the end. You will get the link to the video record probably tomorrow, and we will also put the link to our website in case you want to register. As we were saying before, there are plenty of events coming up, so don't hesitate to have a look at our website if you wish to register. Thank you. Thank you very much, Beata.
Thank you. Have a nice day.
Have a nice day. And just to remind our colleagues who are still watching that we have got lots of wonderful seminars coming up. One of them, Mr. Schwartz, talking about the MFF and how it all happened. Also with colleagues in the Washington delegation talking about the elections, and with Mr. O'Sullivan, with the Director General for the FI, about defense policy. So all that coming up. Thanks very much for being with us, and hoping to see you soon.
Thank you. Bye.
Thank you. Bye. Stop the recording now.